Hi, I'm Andy Ely, Senior Funeral Director for G. Seller Independent Funeral Directors, and we've been serving bereaved families since 1910. I'm sure you're all well aware there's lots of different myths, taboos and misconceptions around what happens behind the scenes within the funeral profession. So we decided to put together this series of podcasts to answer those questions and hopefully dispel those myths. So please do like, share and subscribe and send those questions, send them to liftingthelid@gseller.co.uk and we will do our absolute best to answer them for you. It genuinely is our family caring for your family. Welcome to the latest episode of Lifting the Lid. Today we have a slightly different episode. I've got my colleagues Amy and Joe. How are you both?
Hot.
Back.
It's on a hot day.
So I don't need to introduce you properly because we all know each other, and I think everyone knows us now. So today's episode, we've been going through Google and trying to find different questions, a selection of questions that people ask, different myths. So we've got some of those questions here. So we thought it'd be interesting to take a question, ask it, and see who's best suited to answer it.
And dispel the myths.
Exactly, part of the podcast. So let's make a start. You ready?
Yeah.
I don't know what the first.
Oh no!
I don't know what the first question is. So, the crematoria.
It's like being in a quiz show, isn't it?
Oh, you're
Sorry.
putting me off. I need all the answers underneath. So, the crematoria reuses coffins. So, is that a myth or a fact?
So that is I've got to make sure I read the question right. Reuses coffins is a myth.
Myth.
An absolute myth.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all the coffins are cremated, as we know. So that's absolute myth.
So, I think some of our episodes we actually talk about that process
Yeah,
and the strict process with doing that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that was a quick one. That was easy.
That's an easy start.
Right, let's go again. Oh, okay. So it is not the individual person's cremated remains that you get back. So that again is an absolute myth.
Myth.
Absolute
Yeah,
myth,
absolutely.
Again, we've explained previously, but the process of cremation is entirely personal to the person that's being cremated.
There's too many processes in place for it to not be that person.
And
And
crematorium.
it's-
Back into your care.
It's incredibly strict, isn't it, and properly governed. So yeah, we can absolutely vouch for that.
And they have their own code of conduct, which anyone could go and have a look at any point as well, which explains it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some crematoria have open days, so you can not actually see a cremation, but you can see the processes that they work
Yeah.
to. So it's always quite interesting to do that.
Peace of mind.
Yeah. Okay. If someone passes away from an infectious disease, they must be cremated.
Is a myth.
It is.
Yeah, absolute myth. Yeah, there's no precedent that says that you have to be buried or cremated depending on what you passed away from.
I wonder where that comes from.
What the question?
Yeah.
The idea behind it.
I wonder what's happened in time for that question for someone to think that has to be the case.
Who knows? But no, burial or cremation. No objection to either.
Yeah.
Let's go again. Only people are allowed to be buried in a cemetery. So I'm kind of assuming there that we're talking about pets
Animals.
and animals. So we know the answer to this.
Yeah, well, generally have their own cemeteries and places for burial. If need be, you can get pet cemeteries, can't you?
Yeah,
Yes, there's
absolutely.
some, yeah.
We have some local. Yeah.
Yeah, we do. So yeah, only people are allowed to be buried in a cemetery.
Yeah.
Okay, well this is going well.
Is that the first reality we've had?
Do you know what? I don't know. I can't remember. I think it might be.
Yeah, I think
actually.
yeah.
So, whoa, okay. You do not have to have a funeral service at all. So that's quite an interesting one. That's a really
Quite a
interesting
tricky
one. So what are we talking about in terms of a funeral service there? Are we talking a service as in someone standing there talking? Or the fact that a funeral needs to take place?
Yeah, I mean, we've previously discussed about direct cremations or unattended cremations and the potential role that they have and the effect they can have on families with that. So at its most basic, I guess that is the most basic, but it's still a type of funeral service.
It is.
So,
There's something there, isn't there?
something has to happen to someone eventually. So whether that's described as a funeral service or whether that's just simply going to a crematorium without anyone attending, yeah, I guess it's up for debate.
Yeah.
So it's a difficult one to answer that, whether it's a myth or reality, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a bit of an in-between. We need more specifics on the question there, so please do send them in.
Yeah.
Okay, next. Okay, if a loved one wants to be cremated, you cannot have a service. That's a really interesting question. I'm quite surprised by that one, to be honest with you.
To be cremated, you cannot have a service.
Again, it kind of makes you wonder what circumstances
Yeah, I
occurred
feel
for
like it's
this
very similar. It's
search.
like
It is a very similar
Similar
question
to
to
the question
the
before.
previous, but you absolutely can have a service if you're
Yeah.
cremated. In fact,
Yeah.
we do.
it's a total myth.
Yeah, absolute myth.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that doesn't have to be a service at a crematorium.
It can be elsewhere. We've discussed Mallory Park in the past,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
all sorts of different locations
Just
for that
because the
service.
committal ends up being a cremation, you can have a service any way you wish to, really.
Yeah, myth.
Yeah.
Right, what we got next?
Give us a
Oh, okay. So you cannot keep a body at home. I don't like the word body there, so I'm going to say a deceased at
at
home.
home.
Okay. So it's a myth.
It is.
I
Yeah.
mean, strictly speaking, there is nothing stopping you from someone remaining at home. And of course, there's people are thinking about perhaps preservation of people, and how people will be if they remain at home for a length of time when someone passes away to a funeral. But it's possible for people to be embalmed in their own homes.
Yeah.
In fact, I think Collie Ronda's actually done it at some point,
Yeah.
So it is possible that all this
Just
could be
more of the
organised.
logistical trickiness
It
that
is.
comes with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That is the case.
But I mean, some faves, of course, before the service, we take the deceased home and they spend some time at home
Yeah.
or in
Absolutely, yeah.
church the night before
And
the
that's
actual
far more
service.
common, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Far more common.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yep.
Under the right circumstances, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'd like to pause and take a moment to mention our partner for this podcast, Golden Charter. This podcast contains promotional messages about funeral planning. G. Seller and Company Limited is an appointed representative of Golden Charter Limited, trading as Golden Charter Funeral Plans, which is authorised and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. We know it's never easy to think about death, but there are several good reasons why having a funeral plan makes perfect sense. From an emotional, practical, and financial point of view, planning your funeral in advance is a chance to take control, feel prepared, and get peace of mind for you and the ones you care about. We work in partnership with Golden Charter, one of the UK's largest funeral plan providers, who have over 30 years' experience and have helped over 900,000 people plan ahead for their funeral. Working together, G. Seller and Golden Charter can offer you the personal service and support when it matters most, and the reassurance and the security of a leading funeral plan provider.
The coffin must be transported in a hearse.
Myth.
It's a myth.
There's always that thing like,
Yeah, it's like,
I don't know.
Don't be repeat it. I'm not agreeing it's a myth. Does
Yeah,
somebody
so
know
it is.
something that I don't know? Yeah. Have I
Yeah,
done it
there's
wrong
another
previously
line,
or
yeah.
something? Yeah.
Hearses, of course.
Yeah.
There's the traditional. We've spoken about this and personalisation. There's the traditional, what you'd consider a hearse. The motorised hearse. There's different variations: horse-drawn, motorcycle. There's lots of variations around that hearse, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a specific hearse. So long as it's fit for purpose, I think
Yeah.
is the important piece.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've looked after
Yeah.
people to services before with our conveyance vehicles.
Yeah.
Where people have said that the person who's passed away was terrified of the idea of going in a hearse.
Yeah.
And so they prefer than just use that.
Yeah.
So we've done that before. So yeah, it's a myth. You don't have to be transported in a hearse at all.
Yeah.
So I mean, I looked after a family he was a big HGV driver. So we used the cab and just repurposed the back, where the trailer fits
Yeah.
onto it. I don't know what they're called. And we just repurposed that. So that wasn't a hearse as such.
Yeah.
It
It
was a
tractor
truck.
trailers we've had
Yeah.
as well, haven't we? So
As long
yeah,
as someone's transported safely and securely.
yeah,
So,
But big advocate of making things personal. So it's what's appropriate for that individual.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, let's move on. Deceased must be buried 6 feet under the ground. So that's a common one, I would think.
what do you get that question a lot in arrangements?
It's just kind of the the expectation is it seems to be people believe that. I mean, there's even TV series called 6 Feet Under.
Yeah.
It's a phrase, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're buried 6 feet under.
So what is this? This is an absolute myth.
Absolutely.
So there's all sorts of different variations, isn't there? If we have a double depth plot, the person on the top,
Yep.
Yeah.
not necessarily 6 feet under.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Deeper.
it's a lot deeper than that, and when you're standing at the edge, you think, "Ooh, that's a long way. That is a long way." So yeah, that's an absolute myth.
Yep, myth.
Okay, next. The law requires embalming. So this one's a good one for you, Jay.
Absolute myth.
Myth. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as a part of when we're going through funeral details, we ask people if people are satisfied that we carry out the embalming procedure. Never just assume. And consequently, if people do say no, then it's not law that anyone's embalmed.
However, and you know it's coming up, yeah.
Go on then. You had such a proud look in your face.
Yeah.
You
I
go
know
through it,
something different. So repatriation, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to adhere to those rules to make sure it's safe to transfer or transport that person to or from a different.
Yeah.
So if that's someone who's in a different country and they pass away, and the part of the rules of coming back into this country is that they are embalmed, and there's an appropriate certificate that accompanies them to prove that they have been.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same the other way around, of course.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. Joe, this might be one for you as well. You can be buried naked if you want to. Okay.
Wow.
Well, that's a reality. Yeah.
Yeah.
Andy, I told you not to discuss our private
Sorry.
conversations on the podcast.
That was my question, that one.
Yeah, no, it's in reality. You can be buried naked if you want to.
Have you
Yeah.
ever had that request?
No.
I've never had that request.
No. I have
I
had
don't think that's
underwear.
ever come in
Boxer
conversation.
shorts. A gentleman wished to be laid to rest in his boxer shorts because that's what he wore. It was him.
Yeah.
Fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, why not?
Yeah.
I've had people that requested they're not in a sheet or not in their own clothes or in
A traditional
a traditional gown, but just to use a sheet, that could be provided. I've had people ask me for that because they didn't want to be in clothes or anything like a gown. But,
It's just whatever feels right for people, isn't it? Everyone's completely different.
so if someone was absolutely insistent they wanted to be buried naked, then there is no reason you have to be clothed.
No.
No.
Okay.
There we go.
Is that on your funeral wishes then, Joe?
I cannot possibly divulge.
Embalmed remains will be preserved forever.
Embalmed remains.
We-
So are we talking?
Somebody embalmed and then.
So
cremated, or-
I would, yeah, that's absolutely true. So I would be thinking sort of burial. Someone that's passed away that's been embalmed, will they be preserved forever?
No.
No.
No, not at all. It's a
No,
temporary
yeah,
process.
yeah,
isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah.
You can, through the process of embalming, you can control to a certain extent how long someone might be preserved in a short term,
Yeah.
which we use quite often with chapel arrest, and for how long people pass in our care. There are methods of sort of prolonging, but not indefinitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Absolutely.
No.
Isn't it Walt Disney who's still
Whose head is apparently frozen
Yeah, I was gonna say it's
underneath
cryogenic,
the
isn't it?
castle
Yeah.
or Epcot, is it, in America?
Yeah, I
Something
don't know,
like
but
that,
there's
isn't it?
something I think he's the only person, isn't he, that's like the only person that's kind of preserved.
Wow.
So the next question is Walt Disney preserved in Epcot?
Yeah, someone's gonna. We'll have to do some research
Spoiler
on
alert.
that one. Yeah. Okay. So a vicar has to say the committal at a service.
Myth.
That's a myth. Yeah. So we do that sometimes. Family members have done that sometimes. Anyone can say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you inter cremated remains in a churchyard, then dependent on the current incumbent of the church, they may insist they come and do the committal to inter in a churchyard.
Yeah.
So within their own grounds, then you might find that they insist on doing the committal. But no, I mean quite often we have non-religious funeral services.
Yeah. Which I
we
think
go celebrants.
in that scenario that you're talking, I think that's fair enough.
Yeah,
You know, we're-
absolutely. Yeah.
on a faith ground. Right. What we got next?
Anticipation of wondering what he's going to say. He's like,
Well,
I'm not worried.
now this one. Okay. So there are no financial charges for taking a deceased across county lines. That one is interesting because I get asked
Go on
that frequently. So historically, I believe there used to be, but not anymore.
No.
It's long and
no.
short. So that's a myth. Yeah, we can transfer deceased anywhere around the country. So we've looked after families in, I know, up in Sheffield, down on the East Coast, all over the place, with no additional charges there,
Absolutely. Fine. Myth.
apart from fuel. Okay.
Oh, wait a minute. Not myth. Reality. I misread the question. There's no financial charge. Yeah.
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 Okay. So only one deceased is cremated at one time.
Well, I think we could all be. I think we're all pretty.
We all know the answer to
Yeah,
that one.
absolutely.
Yeah. So
Reality. So
That's
we've
the
discussed
reality.
this many times before, haven't we?
Unless someone's getting confused, thinking that there's two cremators, so at the same time, two cremations can be taking
side by
place.
side.
Yeah,
However,
But they're
only one-
individual
yeah.
cremators, individual
Absolutely.
people within said cremators,
Yeah.
and we can vouch for that. We discussed it earlier. In fact, we've all seen that process
Yeah.
take place.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Okay. A family can still visit you even if you've donated all of your organs. So this would be a medical science
medical
situation
science,
and so
yeah.
on.
Well,
Really interesting, isn't it?
there is nothing stopping someone from coming to a chapel of rest in any instance.
No.
And as funeral directors would advise as to whether we thought it was a suitable scenario for people to come.
Yeah.
So depending on what's been donated will depend on how that image is, I guess, as we're going through embalming, how we're looking after someone. At the very least, people could come to the chapel to come see someone with a closed coffin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there will always
Just
be an
be in
opportunity,
space, yeah.
in that regard.
Yeah.
But well, I think we'd probably say we'd take a judgment on.
That's
How
on an
people looked
individual
at the
case,
time.
But reality,
reality,
it can happen.
it can happen. Yeah,
that's it.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Cool, we're nearly there. In fact,
Last one.
oh, the anticipation of the last one. Oh,
good one.
okay. I think we should have swapped them around a bit. So, interesting. Coffins are recycled.
I'll let you take the last one.
Yeah.
Well, that's absolutely a myth. Yeah, once someone is laid to rest and we carry out that final journey, the process of identification and sealing said coffin, it is never open again from that point.
Yeah. Because we
So-
see that in people's minds, isn't there? Because some people
Yeah,
say, like,
yeah.
oh, just have the cheapest coffin because you'll reuse it.
You just
It's
reuse
like,
it.
ooh.
No,
Yeah, well,
absolutely
no,
not.
no.
In terms of a burial, of course, it's quite logical that the coffin would go
With-
into the grave with the
yeah.
person. It's the exact same process for cremation, of course, as well.
Absolutely.
Interesting to see what sort of things people are Googling now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Very interesting.
I'm kind of hoping we get some more questions prompted to us. So, yeah, hopefully we've dispelled some myths there.
There
So,
we go.
Yeah. Well,
all right, thank
Good
you.
episode.
Yeah, excellent. So, yeah, please, genuinely, send some more questions to us. Like, share, subscribe. Send the I can't even speak. Send the questions to liftingthelid@gseller.co.uk. And, yeah, we'll do our best to answer them for you.